Why not? It's Labor Day. It's season 7, episode 41, 306 of the Decoded Podcast. Last episode for season 7, happening
Dun,
right now
dun, dun.
on a Monday morning. Monday morning. Thanks for a great on-ramp. It was a good on-ramp.
You
We
are
talked about all kinds of stuff. All
you
kinds of
are
stuff that
welcome.
none of our listeners know about. Right? Which
I
is
bet
kind
they
of
I bet they do. I bet you not specifically about you and me, but I'm sure that if drop some of those topics, I'll launch with one. We were sort of talking about the maintenance of dignity in public spaces. So talking to customer service individuals that are sitting on the other side of the sneeze guard or the other side of the doctor's office desk or the bank teller, and them people in general, these people that are in customer service or in services, some measure openly and willingly and probably at too high of a volume, revealing personal information about us while we stand there in front of groups, whether it's, is this still your address? Is this still your mobile number? Are you sure you want to move that $27,000 into half into cash that I will give you right now and half, against your car loan? Just these moments of exposition that should be a small space conversation and not broadcasted for everyone to see. So here's the connection. This often happens in education too, where we blurt, reveal, mention, think we're being quieter than we are, or just flat out don't have the good sense to know that we shouldn't be saying things out loud. And, inadvertently, I want to believe inadvertently, maybe strip kids, colleagues of their dignity. I remember there was at some point, this isn't a well-formed memory, but there was something that happened, and it's since COVID teaching days. So sometime between now and 2021, there were at our schools, it had something to do with our teacher attendance lists when we were covering classes, or there was something in there. And the way the information moved was so me going in to cover Chids' class, so you're off for the day, I could actually see the reason that you took the day off.
oh shit.
There was something there. I just forget what it was, and whether it was on an actual document or it was digital. We had access to see that. I forget what it was, how that came to be. But I thought to myself, really? Like, really? The other thing, there's lots of these little moments I've wondered about this, and I don't know exactly how I feel. But in the mailroom, typically, or wherever the OSSTF, so Teachers Union board, is in your school, because many schools have the union board, right? Mm-hmm. They always have the seniority list. And I don't know. Maybe for some people, they don't want people to know that. They don't want to know that, when they look at the full list of the teachers at that school, that, I'm in the bottom 25%. That's kind of low level, maybe. I think that's a low level for me. But again, I'm looking at this public facing data, and really, some mail rooms are just an open door along a hallway. Other mail rooms, you have to go into the staff room. So in theory, parents walking by, they could walk in, because there's no actual door on the room. Sometimes they could just walk in and start looking around at stuff. Do I want them knowing that I started teaching and whatever? Is that a bit of information, a data point that I don't really want parents or the public to see? Is that something, I'm sure, no, you would only be able to see that there. I was going to say, you could see when I got my teaching, when I was certified, if you went to the OCT website, you could see how much money I'm making if you go to the Sunshine list. It's funny. So just, the stuff that should sort of be inside or small voice being outside and big voice. I have no doubt I'm going to, now that this is top of mind, I'm sure this week I'm going to notice that. I'm going to notice that for sure. So there's the connection to our on-ramp.
I like that connection, and you got me thinking about, um, like, I think, for example, when the seniority list, for example, I think there's language somewhere that says that it must be posted in a certain spot at a certain time so people have access to the seniority list. We get it emailed to us, but then I think there's language that says it needs to be posted in
Yep.
a room for us. But you're right. It's like then it's just access to
I get
start date, full name, position on the list.
I get it that I need to know mine, but
Hmm.
I don't need to know yours, right?
And every year,
Send me an email. Send me an email so I know where I am on any given list.
they say, like, if there's a mistake, contact this person or whatever. You better believe I'm paying close attention this year. Moving
Mm.
moving from elementary to secondary, I want to make sure um, that they have my date right, my start date right, because I'm on a new list now. I want to make sure
Mhm.
that um, the time I've put in is being recognized. In my district, and I don't in my district, if you move from elementary to secondary, all your seniority goes with you. So my start date doesn't change. They just put me in the new sheet. They
Mhm.
plug me in on where my start date was, and I see where I am on the list. I should still be close to the top because I've been doing this job for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so low level, like you said, but still, it's a crack in the armor for people
Mhm.
that,
Well, you're
you know,
cracking their armor. I think you are cracking their armor. Like some people may, get used to it and be okay if something is shared and they just kind of like they roll with it. But when it's enforced or done without thought, that's where I kind of go, no, come on. Come on, let's talk about this. I think this is something I like this. I like this as a bit of an exploration this year. I mean, part of it is to be mindful of how we talk about kids and our colleagues and ourselves in general. We know the power of that. We know the brain doesn't know the difference between it being real or not real. It creates a pattern in our brain. In the same way, that's why self-talk is so important. Well, I think that other talk is important as well. You get used to sort of revealing, you get in this mindset of that you're comfortable with revealing private or potentially confidential or just uncomfortable, what would be considered uncomfortable information about others around you. It builds a pattern of behavior such that you're going to do it without thinking. Your brain knows that pattern. It says, this is easy. I can do this. I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm only going to stop when it becomes painful, uncomfortable, or troublesome, problematic for the brain. And even then it won't necessarily change unless you reverse engineer the pattern of consistent interference in order to sort of keep your brain from doing that. Um, so many times, so many times, educators will stand in the doorway. We've talked about that power of showing up in the doorway and just kind of go on intercom mode and start talking out loud, in front of students about other students or something that's going on in their life or something that's going wrong. Um, had a conversation with a colleague this past week when I was in, and they started to talk, and as soon as it's like that spidey sense went off, I said, I'd just like to close the door. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, protecting you, protecting me. The only way we do this is like the cone of silence, just like in Get Smart. Did you ever watch that show?
yes.
They they'd right in the middle of a meeting, and this dome that comes down, dome of silence, whatever it was called, I forget. I don't know if that ever works, but that's the equivalent of what I'm doing, right? Like I'm closing the door. I'm like, okay, if you're choosing to keep saying this, and they're like, oh, should you be hearing this? I said, I can hear anything I want. The question is, should you be saying this? It's not about me receiving. It's about you. And I mean, it would be about me resharing it, but you can say whatever you want around me. It's actually more about should you be saying it? They continued to talk. So they kept on telling me. Now, whether or not the information will be useful, I don't know. I believe it was a little bit of rapport building because they were telling me some stuff about just the school and students in general. But yeah, I actively pay attention to that. I've closed principal stores, administrator stores when they start to talk about something, and I don't ask. I just close it.
Mhm.
I just close it. I'll put it to them to sort of say, no, I'd rather have the door open. And at which point, one time I said, okay, I'd rather not talk about this now. Then there's too many people in the office. Someone's going to walk by. I said to one person one time, I said, I don't want somebody even having one sentence of what what I'm about to share with you. They're like, oh, they're like, okay, I'll come down to your class after school. I'm like, fine, that works too. So, yeah. Hmm. I like that. I like that because
That's
it's everywhere.
it is
It's
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah.
And if you're intentional about paying attention to other people's business, it's just open your ears and your eyes. It's all over the place if you want it to be. If you're interested or you want that, it's there. But I
Hmm.
think many of us get distracted out in the world. There are certain places, like I was talking to you about going to the bank,
Hmm.
and you're standing there at a teller, and there's three other tellers, and you're all standing close to each other, and very important information is being passed back and forth.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't like it. And it's in the name of efficiency, right?
It is.
It's in the name of efficiency. Like, we're going to line four people here, and they're just going to work through people.
Can I do something right now? Can I just mention something? Remember you and I, we talked about but okay, so my question in that moment is, can you actually prove, so efficiency for me can't be a invisible savings account. What I mean by that is that if efficiency, if efficiency is if operating in an efficient manner is a behavioral pattern for which you can't see the gain or benefit, I would no longer call that efficiency. I don't know what I would call it. I would no longer call that efficiency. So we've talked about this before in the talking about our pod and our individual pods and the amount of hours it would take to the amount of hours it would take for us to map it out, set it up, have the conversation, the interview, go into post production, fiddle, and you and I think we kind of ballparked. I said I was somewhere in the 7 to 10 hours all in. And then at some point, I managed to knock that down to like 3 to 4 hours when I got really, really good. And then, being mindful in this, I'm like, well, what I was doing pods, every couple of weeks. What was I doing with those 3 hours?
Hmm.
And it really is an impossible task well, no, sorry, it's an arduous task to try and figure out what you actually do is save time. But, I would say flat out, doing this pod with you on Saturday mornings has improved the quality of my family life. It has improved it. I'm more open, more available, hyper scheduled, still get great educational conversation, built an amazing relationship with you. Like I can actually quantify the qualitative improvements in my life. These conversations that happen in public and we call them, somehow it's building efficiency. I wonder, because again, unless you can quantify the qualitative positive impact, then I just think it's laziness and people are kind of like losing touch with compassion, rapport, empathy, and just kind of calling it efficient. And on the other side, noticing when the relationship doesn't feel great afterwards, but not backtracking it possibly to this moment in the way that you shared information, which was non-generative and non-relational. It was just info dump, which all that means is TMI. And TMI can be too personal, but it could also be too much right now. Like, this is not the time to do it. That's also too much information. I think we kind of put in the air quotes like, woo, that was extreme. Can't believe that actually came out of their mouth. But I think the TMI can also be, I can't believe that much for that long came out of their mouth. So yeah, I like this. I think there's a, I know that one of my value focus shifts going into September is to slow things down, to slow things down, and to be less take for granted with my um with each step in the school, with each Teresa Meikle, um really cool educator. I interviewed her way back in the day on Chasing Squirrels. She was one of my first interviews where I said, "Hey, I'm imagining at the time it was because of efficiency. I'm like, do you want to just meet up at at a coffee shop and we'll just do an open air conversation?" She's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." So we met up at a Starbucks in Aurora and we just sat there. I put my phone on the table. We talked. Great conversation, but that began this different way of thinking about doing podcasts. And I ended up doing quite a few of those podcasts where my preference, I just went and sat in the room with my iPhone and recorded it. And those were the ones that really felt like the time spent. Yes, it was still away from my family and da 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 da, but I felt like those were the better conversations. Um, but Teresa Meikle and I both, God, it's got to be a decade ago now. So right now she's in deep in mindful practice. She's not only a practitioner, she's also an educator with a focus on mindful practice, mindful practices, teaching at universities, teaching at faculty. Like she's gone deep. But I can remember her and I having conversations when we did our very first or very early mindful practice. They were offering a like a certification, a summer training course in through my board. And it was great. We met up, I think it was maybe, I forget how many there were, but it was a local conservation area in Aurora called Shepherd's Bush, and they have like a meeting house in the middle of this green space. And one day we went out, so there was yoga that was a part of it. There was conversation. There was um, exposition, as in speaking in front of people, and then there was time spent walking in the forest. And I can remember we did this mindful movement in the forest where all of us were walking really slowly and intentionally and paying attention to our bodies in the environment, our feelings that were coming up, our thoughts that were merging up and slow. And I can only imagine how it looked like from the outside if you saw 20 something adults, all in different sort of like shapes and sizes, just moving in slow motion through the forest. But I will tell you the things that I was able to notice and the amount, like that moment was a personal TMI. I was taking in so much stuff that wasn't confrontational. It was just there for me to notice, which was wonderful. And that's something that I've thought about a lot in education is in how do we move at a speed where we can just notice? Someone doesn't have to enforce it. Or even if it is being enforced, you can kind of see left and right of it. You're not getting too bogged down with the fact that the person's screaming at you. Or TMI screaming by volume, screaming by sort of actual, like, well, by volume, too much, or just actual, the number of decibels. The new EA that I'm working with, we were talking a little bit about, I guess, our philosophy of education and working in spec ed. And I said, I've really embraced the whole now what mindset. He's like, what do you mean? I said, someone swears at you. Now what? A kid has an escalation. Now what? But it's not now what as in you must, like you're demanding a response. It's a now what as in what are all the possibilities of what could happen now? Which ones haven't served us in the past? What might be different? We slow it down. We slow it down so that we can kind of say, we've never been able to choose from column C because we grabbed column A way too fast and always wanted to get to column B. So that whole now what, slowing things down, making sure we're maintaining dignity for as many people as possible. And, no, I'll stop there. That's just, yeah, this year I is kind of a year that I think I want to project and protect more of that.
It's good
Teresa
stuff, man.
Meikle. Teresa Meikle.
So
She's
she
good.
works in your system.
She was a principal
Oh,
in my board, yeah. And then she was either on the cusp of retiring. She's done a couple retired positions, like come back and kind of like part-time gig when they're waiting to fill administrative roles. I'm still connected with her on Insta. Um,
I
she
see
came to
her on
Monica.
X. Well, I didn't
Oh,
know she was
is she on X?
principal. Yeah.
She's a former principal. I think former principal. I'm pretty sure principal. Yeah, yeah. I think she definitely VP, but I think she also was a principal as well.
Okay. Information overload.
Hmm.
That would be the title I would give this podcast episode. Information overload.
TMI.
It's funny because most people, from my perspective, just look at the world as people passing by, just staring at their phones all day. But if
Mm.
you look closely, it's not that it's not that. There are still places where you put the phone down, you start opening and closing your mouth, and that's, I guess, where you give away your information in auditory fashion rather than on all the clicks and the sites you go to and sign up for.
Some of my favorite moments are walking through the hallway when students are navel gazing. Remember navel gazing? Remember that phrase? It was like
No,
I
I've never
think
heard of it
late.
before.
You Google that shit, but it's like
Oh,
navel gazing was a style of dance
oh,
that I think maybe came out of the 80s alternative music scene. And it's sort of like the standing kind of like dancing, kind of just looking down like that. It literally is like navel gazing. But the 2024 version of that would be the, looking down the device gazing. One of my favorite moments, and I think I just like it because I like being a steward of the universe, is walking down the hallway and somebody's walking, like, if we're going to honor the state of the right mindset, that means anyone that's walking in the opposite direction and they're coming at you, I stay to the right. I'm center or right. And I'm only center. I only walk center if there's no one in the hallway
hmm.
or if I'm dipping and dodging to get, somewhere. But it's stay to the right, stay to the right, stay to the right. So I love being um, the universe's messenger. Heads up, dude. Heads up, dude. And they're like, oh, oh, like literally, like they've woken up on a Friday, like, and I will wait there until they're like, because I have said the heads up, dude, and they don't move, they just stand there,
Mm.
and I'm like, no, 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 like, you now need to go to the right, so I'll stand there too, and no joke, dude, at my previous school, on a couple occasions, the person didn't move, and we stood there in the hall face to face for a good 10 seconds. That's a long time until I kind of said, you need to stay to the right. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they go off to the right. And I'm sure they're walking away like, that was weird. The old dude didn't move out of my way. Yeah. Heads up.
Heads
Stay to
up,
the right.
dude.
Heads up, dude. And it happens. Funny. I told you about the long walks that I'm taking.
Hmm.
Often there's people with dogs, people on bikes, little kids on bikes. I love little kids on bikes that are just so happy to be riding their bike. They're looking at everything all over the place. I'm like, heads up, dude. And they're like, oh, and like, it's like swerve over to the other side of the path. And the parents come by after them, like, yeah, they just don't pay attention. I'm like, well, they're a kid, right? Kid's like 7 years old.
Right.
Imagine the world as a 7-year old.
There's so much to see.
There is. There is.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm appreciative of the awareness I'm kind of getting right now in terms of there is so much around us. It's not just the phone in front of you
Mhm,
because I'm guilty for that too. And you were talking about your long walks, and
mhm,
what you kind of got me going on is how much over the last 24 to 48 hours, how much um, time and energy I gave to the things around me instead of the phone,
mm.
right? When you're in a
Good.
different place, a new place, I don't know about you, but I'm looking around, I'm paying attention because I want to know How does this work? What's happening here? What do I need to watch out for? Where might be the gifts of somebody giving me things that they don't even know they're giving me, but that I need, Pay
Hmm.
close attention, observe. It was nice. It was nice. Maybe that's one of the big things that come out of my time away on my little trip is I only used my phone. I used my phone to communicate with people like you
Hmm.
and to communicate with my family. But other than that, there was no need for my phone.
Hmm.
Like there was no need for the phone. I even busted out my old school GPS um,
I love it.
because I didn't want to rely on the phone. In fact, you'll appreciate this. When I went over the border from Ontario to Michigan, my phone was a little delayed in connecting to the
Hmm.
new carrier, but I'm still driving. And
Mm.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be problematic for me. So I pulled over and I brought the old school GPS on purpose because I was like, I can't depend on this one device connected to cellular. I just can't. I don't want to.
Hmm.
I want to have a backup plan. A third backup plan would have been to have an actual map. And I think that's what I'm going to do next. I will have wherever I'm going, I will purchase a map if they even still sell them of that place.
Right.
Um, I pulled over, I connected the old school GPS, and I was able to get to where I was going. And when I got there, the people I was meeting with were like, "Yo, I've been messaging you. You've not been responding." I'm like, "My phone, it won't connect." And he just looked at me. He's like, "Well, how'd you get here then?" And I point at it, and he laughs. My buddy laughs. He goes, "I had one of those until I drove into Canada." And the map of Canada wasn't there because there wasn't enough room on the device. So I was like,
Yeah.
forget those things. I'm never
That's
using those
awesome.
again.
That
And I
is
was like, well,
awesome.
thankfully, I've had this long enough that I know that the map of US is in it. And here I am. Sorry I couldn't respond to you, but my phone just, it wasn't connecting.
Hmm.
Um, I had to pay attention to everything. I couldn't just be like, okay, do exactly what the phone says because the phone wasn't saying anything anymore. And I was not interested in panicking. I was interested in action. I can
Yeah,
figure this
exactly.
out. It's not a big deal. I'll figure this out. Oh, you also like this. Connect the GPS, find where I'm going. The next thing that I wanted to do was stop somewhere where I knew I could get Wi Fi to connect
Hmm.
to something to communicate with someone, just to say, this is
Hmm.
what's happening. Because when I finally met up with my friend, he was like, the last time I heard from you, you were at the border and you said you're, 5 minutes away from talking to customs type of thing. He goes, I thought you were still there. Like I thought, oh, something happened at the border. I'm like, no, the border was actually the quickest thing about all this. It was pulling into the US of A and my phone saying welcome to the US and then not functioning. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of paying attention to human behavior, human interaction, the things around me. I felt at sometimes a little overwhelmed and overloaded. And I think that's maybe because sometimes I spend too much time letting the technology direct me. Whereas
Mm.
at this point, I was looking for direction from my environment, and there was a
Hmm.
lot of information to gather and process.
Gotcha.
I got to flex a little bit of like brain power. It was kind of nice.
That
Kind of
sounds it.
nice.
That sounds it. Um, I like this. I've recently, it was actually 2 weeks ago. I'll be curious. I'm curious your reaction to this. I got rid of my smartwatch.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yep. I've gone back to just the
Just the old
digital
school
watch,
type.
old
Okay.
school digital watch. Yeah. I've passed it off to, I first said to Maddie. So I said, "Do you want to give this a try? If they don't like it, then Jake can give it a try." Um, yeah. I'm
What made you do that?
Couple things, a little bit like what you were saying, the paying attention. Having a wearable has come to mean that I'm constantly paying attention, not to my life, but to this little robot on my wrist. I'm paying attention to it, not to my life. I just sort of came to a point where I realized it wasn't, and I needed the space over the summer, I think, to kind of like have these feels.
Mm,
Um, because my life is no less, it really is, my life is less busy during school. And what feels, it's funny, the more scheduled I am, the less busy I feel because I can see exactly where I need to be. And for me that's good. And I'm not talking about me intentionally hyper scheduling. It's just when I can look and see what I have scheduled in the day, I feel better. So open space for me is useful as well. But even like our pod, I put it into the calendar for today. So it's in there. Once you're like, yeah, let's go for it. I'm like, cool, I put it in the calendar. So waking up, I knew where I had to be around, 7:45. And that's useful to me. That information as static information is what's important to me. So it gives me space to have feelings about it. When it's active information is in constantly buzzing on my wrist, I don't feel as good about it. I
mm.
don't feel as good with it integrated like that into my mind. And I think that noticing, heads up noticing, has happened so much more because that's one less thing that I'm having to sort of give my attention to. I'm starting to really recognize the finite volume of my focus and the finite volume of my noticing. And I think that kind of comes down to we can notice a whole lot of different things, but I think my capacity to notice things at a deeper level is what's become more interesting to me. So, um, that was the first part. That was the more, for me, the more profound. On a practical level, I'm just so done with charging it. I'm done with the noticing, oh crap, it's at 5%.
Mm.
And having the feelings like that matters. That's what bothered me. It bothered me the fact that it bothered me that I was bothered, that I now have to figure out how to charge this thing in the next little while. Otherwise, my alarm's not going to go off because I use a vibrating alarm. I'm not going to be able to connect it to my phone, so I can't do anything with it. And the fact that it'd be sitting on my wrist like a tumor, like it's just dead, like it's not doing anything. So now I'm going to carry it around. Am I going to put it in my pocket? What's the point? I might as well wear it. But I'm wearing something that doesn't work anymore. So that was the other part of it. I just thought, like, I'm just done with charging this thing all the time. And then I kind of moved through the like, okay, like, but okay, well, wait, but that gives you a lot of really useful information, like, your heart rate and all that other kind of stuff with exercise. I'm like, well, that doesn't really motivate me to do exercise. It's just from that my motivation isn't there because I'm like, oh, good, now I have my watch, I'm going to exercise more. It's not like that. It was just a catchment for information for something. I had to motivate myself to do the activity, not to wear my watch to track the activity. So then putting my focus into the space that's more valuable to me, get out, move your ass, go do a 3 hour walk. No, doesn't have to be a 3 hour walk, but that's what I meant, right? Like just go do that. So yeah, I don't know if I'll go back at some point, but right now I'm feeling pretty good not having that Apple Watch on my wrist. $43 Casio vibrating digital watch. Right?
Make Jocko happy.
Oh yeah, he's got one of those, a Timex or something, doesn't he?
He just has the straight up, yeah, Iron Man or whatever it is, and it's like it's funny that you should mention this because I have lots of watches, as you
Yeah,
know, and a
yeah.
lot of them are my dad's,
Hmm.
but I have a lot of watches that are not digital. And the the watch I currently have is a digital watch, and I enjoy some of the information it gives me, but it's not
Now,
connected to my phone.
okay, so I was going to ask.
No,
So
it's not.
is it a smartwatch though, but just not connected?
Yeah, it's a smartwatch, but it's not. I don't connect it to my phone. I
Okay,
just
so you're
use it
you're just
for. I use it like it's great at counting my steps, and
so
other health
pedometer.
information that I like.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's got if if I could download music onto it, um, I don't I don't use my watch to connect to anything. I
Mm,
never have. I tried it and I didn't like it because what I found was happening with me was I always had to have my phone on me. I'd be out of range and then
mhm,
it wouldn't do anything until I got back into range and it would explode on my wrist because you missed these text messages and these email and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do this. I'll look at
mhm,
my phone when I want to look at my phone.
mhm.
So yeah, I've got a smartwatch. Um and it's not connected to anything. It's not. I don't need it to be. I like some of the information it gives me, but also I'm not a slave to it. Like the one morning I woke up, it was at 2%. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take it off and charge it. So I took it off, I charged, it was charging, and I went ahead and jumped on the treadmill.
Mhm.
And when I was done, I came up and put it back on, and my son was like, "You were on the treadmill?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You weren't wearing your watch?" I said, "No." And he's just giving me this like look like, "Well, you didn't track anything." I'm like, "That's okay. I know I walked. Like I know that I exercised. I don't
Yeah.
need the watch to tell me at 11 p.m. how many steps I took. Like it's great to know, but I know that what I just did is good for me. So
Yes.
I'm okay. Like I don't need I know that today my step counts off. But I'm not religiously writing it out in a book or something like that. So whatever. But it was just
I
interesting
may
because
do
it's like a
that.
slave
It's
to it.
funny.
Well, you may
I
have to because
I
you're
may
on a
have to,
you're
right?
doing things. I'm
Right,
not
but I've
there.
also
I don't need
no, no,
that.
no, I was gonna say, and moving forward, I thought to myself,
Sometimes you need the metrics. In this case, I don't need any metrics. I know that I did my exercise. I'm good to go.
what's remarkable to me though is that even metrics on ourself can be TMI if they're not purposeful, right? It's again, it's the teacher showing up your door screaming about, something that happened earlier in the day in front of the rest of the students. I think that, that what happened was, yes, there's a lot that I could be using that information for that I don't.
Mm,
So when I'm anointing my wrist with purpose, I realized right now, like if your wrist is a space, right? If it's a space that you want to have purpose there, and I think this is true. Like it is an anointment. You want to know how strong your bond of anointing that space with purpose? Try putting your watch on your other wrist, and you'll realize that it's beyond you just forget to look there. It feels uncomfortable. Wow, both wrists feel very different. There's something almost spiritually weird about doing that. Try putting your pants on, different leg first. All these things that are sort of embedded in belief and behavior that we sort of anoint as real. And I realized that all I really need in this space right here is for it to tell me the time. That's it, just the time, even the date, negotiable, but really the time, and for it to vibrate to wake me up in the morning. That's the only two things I need for it to do. That's it. Everything else, and I tried to get the most basic versions possible. You know how it's very difficult to find a reasonably priced digital non-smart watch that has a vibrating alarm. It's challenging. There's not a
mhm.
lot of companies that make it without it being kind of like a piece of crap or like doesn't have great reviews or whatever. So again, this isn't the G-Shock series, but it's the old Casio just kind of pre the G-Shock series. And like I said, I picked it up on Amazon for less than $50.
Mhm.
So, and it says as long as I only use the alarm once a day, the battery should last 10 years.
Okay.
10 years.
It's a long time.
Now, likely the strap, I know with these things because the strap is pretty thin, likely the strap will break before that because that happened to me before too. But I don't wear my watch in the shower.
Oh,
Wearing the
okay.
watch in shower and salt water as well kills the vinyl or the rubber or whatever. And I know for some people it's not a comfortable strap. So there's a risk there, right? But Timex, you can do a Timex too. Anyways, that was my and I haven't missed it. Like I haven't once looked down at my wrist and forgot that I wasn't wearing my Apple Watch. In the same way that I have slapped my ass in my front pockets, where did I put
Mhm.
my mobile phone?
Mhm.
right? So obviously the mobile phone goes a lot deeper, right? Funny to that end though, I think I told you that I'm a beta tester. I signed up for the beta testing thing for Apple. So I've been using their iOS 18 for most of August. And it's fun. There's a lot of cool things that are a part of it. One of the things that is now completely embedded with is that the phone does all the stuff that well not well as much as I can tell. The data metrics that the Apple Watch would track as far as your walking and your pedometer like that, it's so much more robust on here. So if you are carrying your phone, you don't, and you are interested in tracking your distance or whatever, you don't have to have the watch anymore.
Mm.
So it just uses the GPS and um, its own gyroscope, its own data, and its own GPS to track where you are and the speed with which that the phone is moving. So that's cool.
I like that. That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed the new iOS playing around with it. There's some now they now have send later texts. You can schedule a text.
Oh, you can schedule a text.
How handy
That's
is that,
cool.
eh?
That's
Yeah,
very cool.
there's quite a few kind of there's some small stuff like that that's you can also completely customize like size and shape of your control center. So you can actually just pinch and zoom on things, which is kind of cool.
Mm,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, I've shifted some text up. I've stopped using Chrome on my phone. I'm only using Safari.
Mm.
And it's funny how there's stuff with that I just never really realized Safari could do. So yeah,
It's funny
that's
that you say that. Um, I don't often use Safari. I never use it, but I subscribe to a streaming service that I use on my iPad mainly. And it's been weeks now. I was having issues with it on Chrome. Sorry, I was having issues with it. And then when I contacted the company to say, hey, like, I pay a lot of money for this thing, it's not working right. They were like, is your browser up to date? Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, you know what? You guys recommend Chrome. I'm going to use another browser. I don't care what you recommend. So I went over to Safari for this app. It's not an app for this site, and it's been working perfectly fine.
hmm.
So now I'm revisiting. It's funny that you talk about Safari. I'm revisiting Safari
Hmm.
often because I'm using this app to watch different things on, like I'm watching cable TV on the internet. But it's funny how there are things we become so accustomed to operating a certain way with certain things. We forget that there are other things around. We become so
Hmm.
dependent. I'm gonna take this episode, this last episode of season 7, to move into my new job tomorrow. And I'm
Hmm.
gonna try to be more aware. I'm gonna try to be more aware. I like the idea of slowing down. I like the idea of being more aware. And I like the idea of being with the slowing down the awareness, I hope will bring me some more authenticity to just be me, to know what I need to work on, what
Hmm.
I'm good at, what's in front of me, what do I need to focus on, but not to do it in a way that's so rushed that I'm going to lose myself because I really don't want to lose myself.
There's a lot. I mean, I'm a little jealous. I think I told you that in a polo. I live for these moments of renewal where I can be in a space where I feel like I'm at the beginning of something, meeting new people, new environment, new experiences, new emotions, new ways of thinking. And, a great way to do that is to change schools. Like that's just, when it comes to your job and to know that the skills that you have actually are transferable. So it's not like a brand new job you've never done before, because I'm sure you saw the looks on some of the faces of those individuals that this is actually a brand new job for them, that when you went to that meeting, that staff meeting, you are new to the school but not new to the system per se, or new to the work. And that energy has different flavors than the individuals that just graduated from faculty in June, and they're like, what do I do? What have I done? What am I going to do? So, but I love that those beginnings, the openness, the awkwardness, the bonds aren't firm yet. They feel like they're nice and fluid. I like those moments. Other people don't like those physics. They want that to firm up really quick so they can feel like they move forward. But I think the essence of slowing down is to sort of stay a little bit in that space where stuff is really loose so that you can kind of discriminate, you can choose, you can notice, you can talk about, you can pull apart because that stuff congeals really quickly, right? It really quickly. I think it's great that you start with a PA day tomorrow, don't you?
Yes.
PD. That's a great way to start the year to actually have a PD day. And then do you have your grade 9 day after that?
No, we don't have that this year.
So no grade 9 day. That's because the grade 9s were doing that early thing as an offer,
Yeah,
or
they've had grade 9 days before.
okay.
They just this year it's not happening. So Wednesday, everybody will be in the building.
Interesting. Interesting. No grade 9 day. Yeah, so
Nope.
we have the grade 9 day tomorrow, and then
Okay.
Wednesday, everyone comes in. So, but I dig it. I like that you're starting. We've had that in the past where we've actually had a PD day before the grade 9 day. Um, Either way, it's rot. I mean, I now know too much. I know how stressful that is for anyone that actually has to get us on ramped, right? Um, and everyone's just kind of sitting there about like, let's we've got our toes dipped in. Let's just get going. Let's just get in and get rolling. Um, but yeah, I'm jealous, but that's okay. I'll deal. I'll live vicariously through your experiences. You sharing, your process so far has been wonderful. Um,
I'm glad that you're pumped about it.
mhm, mhm. It's work. You know what? Really, what it comes down to, it's work. I have
Yeah, it's
every
work.
confidence because I've told you I would hire you in a second. And again, I know too much about the system. I would hire you in a second. And would there be any more less work? No. Yeah. But the great thing is that what I've learned about you is that you have the capacity to know what work you need to do next and what work you shouldn't do next because like you can prioritize. You have the capacity to prioritize what you need to know, not only to serve your professionalism, but also to stay connected with the kids. So to that end, if I flip it back to sitting beside you, I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be a shit ton of work to try and figure this out. But again, that's just how strong's your back and how tired are you, right? How many hours in the day, how strong's your back? Like it's that kind of work. I think, and when you start to do it, it's enrichment to what you already know, right? And it's gonna bring out of fallow some of the fields that you probably haven't used for a little while, like having to sort of tap in and like, oh, that's right. I haven't had to sort of use this toolkit for a bit, but I'm aware of it. That'll be again, how strong is your back? How many hours of the day? But it's you have access to it. You have access to it. You'll find yourself the kids are just the kids. The problems that they have are just the next step to what we started to talk about in elementary. Likely the staff will be similar, but there is a different vibe to working with teachers that work with adults primarily, teachers that work with teenagers primarily, and teachers that work with elementary schools. You're gonna feel the developmental character difference between for sure. Um, and then you're gonna meet the people that break the mold. It's like I really don't know how to place you. Like I don't know what do you teach again? Really? You teach math? Like you're gonna have those moments too. Like I can't even believe that. Yeah, you're a French teacher. That's remarkable to me. I thought for sure you were a tech. You know what I mean? Those kind of moments. So it's all. I love it. Love it.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think it's time to punch out and say goodbye to season 7.
Bye bye, season 7. Bye
Take
bye.
care, season 7. Thanks for treating us well, and to all the other seasons before 7. Thanks for
You are
hanging with
equal.
us.
We love you all equally.
I think I mentioned to you at some point that I went back and I watched our first and second episodes,
I
and it was
should. I
like
should.
it was hilarious. My camera resolution, like it just looks like it's the 80s. It just looks horrible, and it's like but to me, it's a testament to you and I and our purpose. Let's
Mhm,
get together on the Saturday morning. Let's have our conversation. Let's
mhm,
decode some stuff. Let's do our thing. I love that because it's proof. It's for me, it's proof that I do what I say. Not all the
mhm.
time, but in this case, yes. You can watch it. It's horrible, It's funny. I was amused, but it's there. It happened. And actually, it wasn't our first episode. It was our second episode because for
I
some reason,
know. The first episode is lost, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, okay. This was season 7, episode 41, number 306. We'll catch you later. Peace.
Absolutely, man. Peace.